When people imagine looting, they picture a quick smash and grab, a loud night, a broken window, then it fades. But the scenario that wrecks neighborhoods isn't the first wave. It's what comes after, when the chaos gets comfortable. Because once the lights stay off long enough and response times stretch into maybe later, some groups stop roaming and start occupying. They move into empty houses, they park up and treat a block like a base, and suddenly the threat isn't a random break-in. It's pressure. It's presence. It's the slow feeling that your street is being claimed. This is a preparedness breakdown, not a prediction, and not advice to do anything illegal or reckless. In a real emergency, follow local laws and any official guidance you can get. Your goal is to stay safe, avoid confrontation, and make smart decisions that keep your household alive. So let's talk about what actually matters when trouble doesn't leave. First, you have to recognize the shift early. There's a huge difference between panic movement and territorial behavior. Panic looks like people sprinting, grabbing, disappearing. Territorial behavior looks like people lingering. You start seeing the same faces repeatedly, the same vehicle parked too long, foot traffic that doesn't match the normal rhythm of the block, a house that should be empty but suddenly has activity around it, especially after dark. The first stage is testing, not necessarily breaking in, more like measuring you. That can look like a knock at an odd hour with a weird question. Somebody walking past your place too slowly more than once. Someone standing at the end of the driveway pretending to be on the phone but watching. A big tell is this: if the behavior feels casual but repetitive, it's probably not casual. And once you suspect that, your top priority becomes time. Not hero moments, not winning, time. Because time lets you make decisions while you're still in control. Here's the second piece. Don't advertise that you're doing better than the street. In a long outage, comfort is a beacon. Light spilling through windows at night, loud activity, strong cooking smells, constant movement in and out. Even something as simple as being the only house with visible, normal life can draw attention from people who are bored, desperate, or looking for easy wins. So you go low profile, close blinds and curtains before it gets dark. Keep interior lighting dim and not visible from outside. Avoid loud routines, especially at predictable times. If you have to cook, think about scent and timing. If you can eat something cold and boring for a couple of days, that's sometimes the smarter call. The goal is to look like a house that has nothing worth the hassle. Now the third piece is your physical setup, but keep it simple and legal. Most home intrusions are not clever. They're force and opportunity. So you focus on entry points. Start with doors. A lot of doors fail at the frame, not the lock. Reinforced strike plates and longer screws that bite into the studs are basic upgrades that add time and noise. Good locks matter, but the frame is what takes the hit. For windows, your goal is to reduce easy access. Make sure locks actually work. Add secondary locks where appropriate. For sliding doors, a physical bar in the track is one of the simplest upgrades that can prevent a quick slide open. Lighting is another low-drama win. Motion lighting on approach paths and dark corners makes it harder for someone to work unseen. You're not trying to light the neighborhood like a stadium. You're just removing the comfortable shadows. And cameras, if you have them, should be placed to see faces on approach. Cameras don't guarantee safety, but they can deter casual opportunists and give you information without you stepping outside. Now let's talk about the part most people skip, inside the house. If you're dealing with a longer-term threat, you need an internal plan that does two things. 1, keeps your household calm and coordinated. 2, gives you a place to regroup if something feels wrong. Pick one room as your regroup spot. Keep it simple. You want a door that closes, a charged phone, a flashlight, basic first aid, and a way to communicate. This isn't about turning your home into a maze. It's about removing chaos, because the biggest danger inside a tense home is confusion. People scattering into different rooms, someone going to check it out, someone opening a door because they're scared and want to see. So you decide your rule ahead of time. If there's a knock, you don't open the door just to talk. If something sounds wrong outside, you don't step onto the porch to investigate. You observe from inside. You use cameras or windows from a safe angle. You keep your voice calm and your movements controlled. Distance is safety. And if communication works, you call for help. If it doesn't, you still keep the posture of a household that's awake, organized, and not easy to surprise. Now here's the uncomfortable truth about occupation behavior. It's not always one group. It can be rotating people, friends of friends, or opportunists who notice a base has been established. That's why your real defense isn't just hardware. It's your information game. You want to know what's changing around you without making yourself the main character. So pay attention quietly. Do you hear vehicles arriving at the same time each day? Do you see people walking the same path repeatedly? Do you notice trash piles growing near a house that should be empty? Do you hear shouting at night, or music, or generators, or loud social activity? Those details are data, not gossip. Data. And data helps you answer the most important question. Is this a temporary mess, or is this stabilizing into a problem? Because if it's stabilizing, you need to consider a hard decision that people hate talking about. Leaving early is usually safer than leaving late. Bugging in can be the right call in many situations, but it's not a religion, it's a strategy. And strategies have exit criteria, so define yours now, calmly. What conditions mean you stay? What conditions mean you relocate temporarily? Examples of sane triggers might be repeated testing at your door, break-ins on your street, fires nearby, or an obvious pattern of the same group moving block to block. Your triggers should be observable, not emotional. Not, I feel weird. More like, this happened twice. That house got hit. Movement escalated. We no longer have a safe margin. If you decide to leave, it's not a panic sprint. It's a controlled move. You keep your essentials ready in a boring go bag. You keep documents and meds organized. You keep fuel above empty when you can. You know at least 2 routes out that don't funnel through the main choke points. And you don't announce it. You don't broadcast it. You leave quietly if you leave at all. Now let's talk about neighborhood dynamics, because this can help or hurt you. In a drawn-out scenario, isolated households are easier to pressure. Not because they're weaker people, but because they're alone. If you have even one trusted neighbor, coordination can create stability. Not a big committee, not a loud group chat, just basic cooperation. A simple check-in schedule. A shared understanding of what's normal on the block and what's not. A plan for watching entrances from inside without people patrolling outside like they're trying to start a fight. The goal of community isn't confrontation, it's awareness and deterrence. But you also have to be careful with information. In unstable times, loose talk turns into targeting. So keep your preparedness private. Don't brag. Don't show supplies. Don't become the person everyone associates with extra. If you help in ways that don't expose your pantry. Information, directions to resources, basic low-risk support. Now the mental side, because this is where people quietly break. If your neighborhood is tense for days, your brain starts doing weird things. Every sound becomes a threat. Every shadow feels personal. Sleep gets shallow. You get jumpy. That's normal, so you build routine on purpose. A morning check from inside. A midday inventory, so you're not constantly worried. A pre-dark lockdown routine. Doors, windows, blinds, lights, comms check. Routine reduces decision fatigue. It keeps you from spiraling. It also keeps your household on the same page, and if you're the calm one, your household will copy you. If you're frantic, they'll absorb that too. So your prep in this scenario is emotional discipline. Now, if a confrontation starts to form outside your home, your best move is usually to avoid it, not step into it. Don't go outside to argue. Don't yell into the street. Don't escalate just because you're angry. You stay inside. You observe. You communicate if possible. You prioritize safety. And if your home becomes unsafe, the smartest move might be leaving, not holding the line for pride. Pride has a body count. Here's the core principle that ties all of this together. You're trying to look like a bad investment. A house that's quiet, boring, hard to read, and harder to approach without being noticed. People looking for easy wins don't want effort. They don't want noise. They don't want uncertainty. So you reduce signals of comfort, tighten entry points, build a calm household routine, and decide your exit triggers before you're exhausted and scared. That's how you survive the looters don't leave scenario without turning your life into a 24/7 panic loop. And if you want one takeaway to remember, make it this: don't wait for the moment you're sure. When it comes to neighborhood decline, waiting for certainty is how people get trapped inside. A worsening situation with fewer options every day. Stay observant, stay boring, stay legal, and keep your decision-making simple. Because if your street ever becomes contested territory, the household that survives is rarely the loudest one. It's the one that stays calm, stays hard to read, and moves before the situation chooses for them.